The year is 1941, June. A Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-3 streaks through the skies near Moscow, its AM-35A engine screaming at 25,000 feet. Below, a German He-111 bomber drones toward the city, oblivious to the hunter above. The Soviet pilot, Alexander Pokryshkin, dives, his guns sparking, but the bomber shrugs off the hail of bullets like a bear swatting flies. Out of ammo, Pokryshkin roars past, cursing his plane's pea-shooter armament. Yet hours later, he's back in the air, using the MiG-3's blistering speed to ambush another bomber. Welcome to Historical Digs, where we unearth the untold tales of history's most ingenious machines. This was the enigma of the MiG-3, a fighter that could outclimb anything in the sky but just couldn't pack a punch. Today, we take a closer look at the Soviet Union's high-altitude underdog, a plane born from desperation, forged in fire, and abandoned too soon. Born to climb, doomed to starve. The MiG-3 story begins not in a design bureau, but in Stalin's iron-fisted paranoia. By 1939, Soviet intelligence reports warned of Nazi bombers capable of striking Moscow at altitudes beyond 25,000 feet, a ceiling the USSR's aging Polikarpov I-16s couldn't touch. Stalin, ever the micromanager, demanded a new fighter that could choke the fascist vultures in their nest. The task fell to Artem Mikoyan and Mikhail Gurevich, two engineers better known for their political savvy than aeronautical genius. Their mandate? Build a high-altitude interceptor in 18 months or join the growing list of disappeared aviation designers. The result was the I-200 prototype, a sleek all-metal marvel that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. Powered by the Mikulin AM-35A, a 1,350 horsepower V12 engine tuned for thin air, the I-200 could climb to 26,000 feet in 6 minutes. A feat that left German test pilots slack-jawed when they later captured one. But speed came at a cost. To save weight, Mikoyan used birch plywood for the rear fuselage, a decision that caused the tail to warp in humid conditions. Worse, Stalin's obsession with altitude meant armament was an afterthought. The production MiG-3, rushed into service by March 1941, carried just one 12.7mm Berezin UB machine gun and two 7.62mm Shakas guns, a combined rate of fire slower than a Bf-109 Sneeze. Test pilot Stepan Suprun, a veteran of the Spanish Civil War, saw the flaws immediately. During a 1940 trial, his guns jammed after 30 rounds, leaving a target drone unscathed. It's like bringing a slingshot to an artillery duel, he fumed in his logbook. But Stalin didn't care. At a Kremlin showcase, he petted the MiG-3's nose like a prized hound, declaring, "This will be the sword of the proletariat." Engineers exchanged nervous glances. They knew the truth. The MiG-3 was a racing greyhound forced to fight wolves. Now, before we dive deeper into the MiG-3's insane story, hit that like button and subscribe to Historical Digs. Your support helps us unearth the lost stories of history's most ingenious war machines. The factory floors told the same story. At Plant Number 1 in Moscow, workers labored under armed guard, assembling MiG-3s with parts scavenged from Lend-Lease shipments and scrap TB-3 bombers. Engines arrived without carburetors. Wings lacked alignment pins. One mechanic recalled fitting a tail section with shoe nails because rivets were rationed. By June 1941, 1,200 MiG-3s had rolled off the line, but only 30% were combat-ready. The rest collected dust in hangars, awaiting parts that never came. Then came Barbarossa. On June 22, 1949, the Luftwaffe struck Soviet airfields at dawn. MiG-3s parked wingtip to wingtip erupted in fireballs, their plywood fuselages burning like matchsticks. In the 4th Fighter Regiment alone, 63 MiGs were destroyed on the ground. Pilots lucky enough to scramble found their planes shuddering at low altitudes, the AM-35A choking on thick air. But the MiG-3 had one card left to play: altitude. At 25,000 feet, where the AM-35A purred like a contented tiger, it could outpace any German fighter. The problem? Nobody fought up there. The Luftwaffe's doctrine focused on low-level strikes, leaving the MiG-3 a king without a kingdom. Stalin, ever delusional, ordered Mikoyan to fix the plane. Engineers responded by bolting on a 20mm cannon, but the added weight made the MiG-3 handle like a drunk bear. By 1942, the Kremlin's love affair was over. The MiG-3 was relegated to night raids and reconnaissance, a once proud interceptor reduced to a glorified courier. But in the hands of a few daring pilots, the MiG-3 found redemption. Guards Captain Lev Shestakov, flying a stripped-down MiG-3 with extra oxygen tanks, ambushed Ju-86 reconnaissance planes at 30,000 feet, a realm even the Bf-109 feared to tread. "We owned the sky where the air was too thin for fascist lungs," he boasted. It was a niche role, but a vital one. The MiG-3's eyes in the stratosphere gave Soviet commanders early warnings of Stuka raids, buying precious minutes to scramble defenses. The high-altitude gamble. June 23, 1949. The sun hadn't yet risen over Minsk when Lieutenant Alexander Pokryshkin scrambled into his MiG-3, its engine still warm from the previous night's sortie. German bombers droned overhead, their shadows blotting out the moon. Pokryshkin climbed steeply, his altimeter spinning past 20,000 feet. At 23,000 feet, he leveled off, the AIM-35 finally hitting its stride. Below, a formation of HE-111s crawled like beetles. Pokryshkin dove, his gun spitting fire. Tracers glanced off the bomber's belly. No effect. He banked for another pass, but a swarm of Bf-109s intercepted him. Outgunned and outnumbered, Pokryshkin fled into the clouds, cursing his flying toothpick. This was the MiG-3's wartime reality, a fighter trapped between its design and desperation. While the Luftwaffe's Bf-109F dominated at medium altitudes, the MiG-3's engine gasped below 16,000 feet. Pilots liken it to racing a thoroughbred through quicksand. Yet for all its flaws, the MiG-3 had two weapons Stalin's other planes lacked: speed and the element of surprise. In the chaos of 1941, Soviet pilots improvised. Captain Konstantin Gruzdev discovered that the MiG-3's high-speed dive could outrun German flak. He pioneered sniper dives, swooping from 27,000 feet to strafe panzer columns before zooming back to safety. "The Germans never looked up," he chuckled. "By the time they did, we were specks." Other pilots like Lydia Litviak, the White Rose of Stalingrad, stripped their MiGs of armor and guns, transforming them into lightning-fast reconnaissance birds. Litviak's photos of German troop movements near Kharkiv in 1942 saved entire Soviet divisions from encirclement. But the MiG-3's most audacious role emerged from sheer necessity. In late 1941, with the Luftwaffe hammering Moscow, engineers bolted 6 RS-82 rockets under a MiG-3's wings. The result? A makeshift Bodenplatte killer. On December 5, 1941, Lieutenant Ivan Kolodov used these rockets to obliterate a Ju-88 reconnaissance plane near Tula. The Luftwaffe, baffled by the flaming debris, initially blamed Soviet witchcraft. Soon, entire MiG-3 squadrons were modified as rocket trucks, harassing German supply trains. Night became the MiG-3's best ally. The 586th Fighter Regiment, an all-female unit later dubbed the Night Witches, flew moonless sorties over German lines. With navigation lights off and engines throttled back, they ghosted past enemy defenses. "We drop flares to mark targets, then vanish," said pilot Yekaterina Budanova. The pilots shot at shadows. One MiG-3, piloted by Raisa Belyaeva, survived 37 night missions, a record attributed to her habit of greasing the wings with animal fat to muffle airflow. Yet the MiG-3's Achilles heel remained its armament. When German pilots upgraded to 20mm cannons, Soviet engineers experimented with comically inept fixes. One prototype, the MiG-3U, mounted a 37mm Noodleman cannon. But the recoil shook the plane so violently, pilots nicknamed it the Earthquake. Another variant, the I-211, swapped the AIM-35A for a radial engine, only to stall when production shifted to the LA-5. Tactical genius, industrial tragedy. By 1942, the MiG-3 had become a symbol of Soviet desperation, a fighter simultaneously revered and reviled. While pilots cursed its anemic armament and finicky engine, factory workers faced a grimmer reality: Stalin's whims. The AIM-35A engine, the MiG-3's lifeline, was also powering the Il-2 Sturmovik, the dictator's beloved flying tank. When Mikoyan begged for more engines, the Kremlin's response was a blunt telegram: prioritize Il-2 production, MiG-3 is secondary. Failure means treason. Factory managers wept. Engineers burned blueprints to stay warm, and the MiG-3, starved of resources, began its slow march into obsolescence. But in the skies, the MiG-3 refused to die. Pilots turned its weaknesses into weapons. Guards Captain Lev Shestakov, a former test pilot, stripped his MiG-3 of armor, radios, and even the rear tank fuel, transforming it into a high-altitude assassin. With oxygen tanks scavenged from downed HE-111s, he stalked Ju-86 reconnaissance planes at 32,000 feet, a realm so cold his breath crystallized on the canopy. "The Germans never saw us," Shestakov wrote. "We dive from the sun, fire a burst, then vanish before their gunners woke up." His tally, 11 kills, all scored above 25,000 feet. The MiG-3's true brilliance, however, lay in adaptability. Over Leningrad, besieged and starving, mechanics cobbled together Moskva Specials, MiG-3s retrofitted with ski landing gear and makeshift bomb racks. These winter hybrids harassed German supply columns, their pilots dropping 100-pound incendiary bombs on truck convoys. But the most audacious modification came from Captain Konstantin Gruzdev. After his MiG-3's guns jammed during a dogfight, he rammed a Bf-109, shearing off its tail with his propeller. Miraculously, Gruzdev survived. His mechanics, inspired, welded steel blades to his prop hub, creating the first Turan fighter, a flying buzzsaw. Gruzdev's next 3 kills came via aerial decapitation. "The Germans panicked when they saw those blades," he recalled. "They'd roll away, and that's when I'd shoot them in the belly." The MiG-3's guerrilla tactics couldn't mask its industrial collapse. At Factory No. 1 in Moscow, workers assembled planes by candlelight after Luftwaffe raids shattered the power grid. Engine blocks cast from inferior steel cracked under stress. Desperate engineers replaced aluminum skin with tar-coated canvas, a trick that saved weight but turned MiG-3s into fire traps. "We knew the planes were death traps," confessed assembly line foreman Boris Yakovlev. "But Stalin wanted numbers, not quality, so we gave him coffins with wings." By mid-1942, the MiG-3's production lines ground to a halt. The final blow came when Stalin ordered all AM-35A engines diverted to the Il-2. Mikoyan's last-ditch effort, the I-211, a radial engine MiG-3, failed when the prototype's M82 engine exploded during testing. The MiG-3 was dead, but its pilots weren't done. In the Arctic, the 19th Guards Regiment kept their MiG-3s airborne using parts cannibalized from wrecks. Captain Pavel Kamozin, flying a hybrid of 3 scrap MiGs, ambushed a Ju-52 transport over the Barents Sea, downing it with a single 12.7mm burst to the cockpit. "Luck," he shrugged. But luck didn't explain his 35 confirmed kills. Kamozin's secret? Altitude. "Stay high, strike fast, never engage below 20,000 feet, he preached. His disciples, the Sky Ghosts, became the Luftwaffe's worst nightmare. Invisible until it was too late. The MiG-3 swan song came in 1943 during the Battle of Kursk. Outnumbered 10-1, aging MiG-3s flew Turan missions against German bombers. Lieutenant Pyotr Pokryshev rammed a Ju-88, shearing off its tail with his wing. He parachuted to safety, but his plane, patched together from 4 wrecks, plummeted into no man's land. Ground troops recovered its engine, still ticking like a stubborn heart. The MiG-3's epitaph wasn't written in victories, but in defiance. It was a plane abandoned by its creators, betrayed by its engine, and outgunned by its enemies, yet it fought on, a testament to the pilots who refused to let it die. Legacy of the Stratosphere Ghost. The MiG-3's post-war fate was as unceremonious as its service. By 1945, the USSR had moved on. Jet prototypes like the MiG-9 crowded hangars, while surviving MiG-3s were stripped of guns and engines, their airframes converted into kolkhoz tractors or chicken coops. But in the shadows of the Cold War, the MiG-3's DNA quietly reshaped Soviet aviation. The MiG-15, the jet that shocked the world in Korea, owed its swept wings to the MiG-3's high-speed trials. Engineers studying the MiG-3's instability at Mach 0.7 realized swept wings could delay shock waves, a revelation that birthed the jet age. Test pilot Ivan Kovalov, who flew both planes, noted the MiG-15 felt like the MiG-3's angry grandson. Same blood, just hotter. Even the MiG-21, the iconic fish bed, carried traces of its ancestor. Its emphasis on climb rate and interception mirrored the MiG-3's original mandate. Stalin wanted a high-altitude killer, Mikoyan confessed in a 1968 interview. "We gave him one, twice." But the MiG-3's most enduring legacy was human. Veterans like Alexander Pokryshkin, who scored 59 kills after transitioning to the P-39-era Cobra, credited the MiG-3 with teaching him the art of the ambush. His tactics, dive, strike, disengage, became standard for Soviet jet pilots in Korea. Similarly, the Night Witch's night reconnaissance methods evolved into Cold War electronic warfare strategies. The MiG-3 also found unlikely admirers abroad. In 1945, U.S. intelligence agents smuggled a captured MiG-3 to Wright Field, Ohio. Test pilots marveled at its climb rate but mocked its armament. Yet NASA later studied its laminar flow wings to improve high-altitude reconnaissance planes, including the U-2. In the USSR, the MiG-3 became a propaganda tool. Museums displayed polished MiG-3s as symbols of Stalinist ingenuity, airbrushed of their flaws. The Kremlin even produced a film, Sky Ghosts of Moscow, depicting MiG-3s swatting Heinkel's like flies. Veterans boycotted the premiere, their problem being portrayed as heroes, when all they saw themselves as just survivors. The truth resurfaced in 1991 when Soviet archives opened. Records reveal that only 12% of MiG-3 sorties resulted in kills, the lowest of any Soviet fighter. Yet veterans defended their plane. "Numbers don't tell the whole story," insisted Shestakov. "Every recon photo, every delayed bomber, bought time for Moscow. The MiG-3 wasn't a killer, it was a shield." Today, 3 MiG-3 survive. The most poignant rests in Monino, Russia. Its plywood fuselage pockmarked with bullet holes never repaired. Curators left the damage visible, a deliberate choice. It's a lesson in how desperation breeds innovation and how even flawed machines can become legends. The MiG-3's final irony? Its AM-35A engine, salvaged from a scrap heap, now powers a Siberian fishing boat. Every dawn, it chugs to life, its pistons pounding like the heartbeat of a ghost still refusing to rest. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to join us on the next historical dig. Until then, keep exploring the stories they didn't teach you in class.